Of course, eagle-eyed observers in the last lesson would have realised that I didn't actually run this last bit of code. So before we get on with today's lesson on inheritance, let's just run this, see if this destructor runs at the end of the program. So let's give this a whiz. And we can see there that when the bond class gets destroyed, at the end of the program, then this message gets printed out. Now that was just for those who've seen the end of the previous lesson. If you haven't seen the end of the previous lesson, forget anything happened and pretend that we're starting now. Okay, we're going to move on to inheritance. This is one of the beauties of C++, and what we're doing is we're encapsulating things. So when I inherit from my father, I don't have to start again from scratch. I get most of what he's got. I get most of his genes. So I get most of his stuff, and then I add on a few things. It's a lot easier for me to add on a few things than to completely rebuild everything from scratch when I inherit from him. And quite often what we'd like to do with C++, which we can't do in C, is we'd like to take 10,000 lines of fantastic, beautiful working code and not change it because it works, it's perfect, it's brilliant, but we want to add a few things on. And what we can do is we can inherit from the old perfect thing, but we don't have to rewrite all of the code which we know works and which we know we've tested and everything. We just want to add on a new function or a new thing. So we might have a class called tree, and we might want to add on some things to do with pines because we want to create a new class called pine trees. Now we don't have to add everything to do with trees. We just inherit from the tree class and then add on a few things to do with pine trees, like a method called produce cone or go evergreen. Later on we might have a specific kind of pine tree, so maybe a Lebanese cypress pine tree, and then we just inherit from pine tree. We've got the cones and we've got the going green, and in that one we might have a new method of, I don't know, spreading branches. Again with car we might have a basic thing for car which has accelerator, brake, etc. Then we might have sports car inheriting from that, in which we have a large engine and big brakes. And then we might have super sports car inheriting from that one. Anyway, hopefully you're getting the idea. What I'd like to do then is, this is the bond class. Let's get to the main program. Let's just tidy a bit of this up because we've covered try and catch in an earlier lesson. So let's not worry too much about that anymore. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have, not bond, but something called, let's say, DurationBond. Like sports car and car. Bond is car, DurationBond is sports car. With this DurationBond, what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of get all of the code of Bond without having to rewrite it. I don't even want to see it. Because I'm going to do things later on with DurationBond, which are to work out the duration of this bond here, which I'm pricing with Bond. So what we'd like to do then is do that. Have a DurationBond inheriting from Bond, see if we can do that. So we're going to do this backwards. None of this is going to work at the moment. We're going to see if we can get the bond price method to work without actually having to rewrite that code, and just by using DurationBond inheriting from the bond class. So let's just set this up the way we want it to finish. So what we'd like to do then is we'd like to use a new class called DurationBond. Think of sports car inheriting from car. Not write any of the construction code. Not write any of the getting the bond price code, but still be able to do this to get out a price for DurationBond. Okay, so it might sound a bit hairy, but let's give it a go. Now the first thing we need to do, if we're going backwards, we don't need bond H anymore because the main program isn't using the bond class, but later on we will be using the DurationBond class. So we're going to put DurationBond there, probably broken it in many ways. Okay, so the main program doesn't know anything about the bond class, so you drive a sports car, you don't know anything about the previous car it was based on. We only know about DurationBond. Now DurationBond knows about the bond class, but that's a different matter. So there we go. Obviously this isn't going to work. Build failed, loads and loads of problems. So what I need to do then is I need to create a new class called DurationBond. And we don't need any of this silly nonsense here. Oh, look at that. We've got, this is the, which file is this? This is the, oh, we've got the header file as well. So let's do that. Super trooper. If by the way, I haven't talked about this before. This is a kind of compiler directive saying if I haven't defined the full name here called DurationBond, then define DurationBond, put everything inside here, then end this if condition. So you might want to think of this as being a bit like an if condition like that. So if we haven't defined this thing, then define it. We only want to define it once. We don't want to define it 27 times. It's going to slow everything down. So in here, in this new DurationBond header file, what we need to do is we need to say, oh, we need to borrow everything from, it's hard to get a hash symbol on a Mac. We need to borrow everything from the bond.h file. So we're going to, this is the first step towards inheritance. Then we're going to say class DurationBond. We'll do the next bit in a second. We'll set up a basic constructor, public constructor. This is going to match what we have in the main program, so it's going to look a lot like that. Duration header. So remember, this is the prototype. And DurationBond, that's, don't need this obviously, that's going to be a double. So 3 more doubles and then a char, so double, double. It's just the same as the bond class, which we're kind of piggybacking on, and then a char. Everybody happy so far? We'll have a destructor or deconstructor. And there we, oh, let's not have it there, let's move it over. And we won't have any private variables. Notice in the bond class we had to have private variables. We're not going to bother because we're going to piggyback on top of bond. Now how are we going to piggyback on top of bond? A little bit of magic here. We go public bond, and that basically says there's some funny bits and pieces here to do with this, which I won't go into now. Basically, this will give us access to everything inside the bond class that we need to get hold of. We're not going to be able to get hold of the private things inside the engine of bond, but then we should never need to. I don't want you going to the engine of my car. I just want you to drive my car. So we're going on a piggyback. We're piggybacking on bond, but we're not, we're not digging into the entrails through the belly button. Okay, that's probably as much as we need there. I think it's as much. It can get a bit hairy sometimes with the H files. We might have a problem with the H files, so we'll try and see that later. Okay, now, do we need to do anything to the bond H file? I don't think so. I think we're okay with this. This should be all right. I think this is probably okay the way it is. What we then need to do is we then need to go to the DurationBond C++ file. So let's have a crack at that then. And the first thing we need to do, we need to include our own header file. And then what we'll need to do is create that constructor that we talked about. Now all I'm going to do in here is basically copy the construction parameters of the original bond class, because if we look to the main program, what we have, don't we? 1, 2, 3, 4, und 5. Following the universal law, of course, that everything relates to 5. So 666, how does that relate to 5? You take the 666, you add them up, you get 18. You take the 18, you take the 1 and the 8 from 18, you add it up, that's 9. That's 3 squared, 3 to the 2. 3 plus 2 equals 5. Everything in the universe relates to 5. Now we're going to do a little bit of magic here in a second. But I'm not going to do it right this second. All I'm going to do in here is I'm going to just put out a little message saying in the DurationBond constructor. That's all I'm going to do there. I'm not going to do anything else for the moment. There is a bit of magic I need to add, but we'll add that in a second. Now, in a sort of corollary, I'll put the D constructor in as well. So DurationBond class, and this is going to do with the special magic DurationBond method, and I will also put in here cout. Let's just copy this line here. In the, let's put the tilde on there just so we know where we are. Deconstructor or destructor. Deconstructor will do. We know what it is. Okay, I think we've got everything there. We can see errors here. Why have we got errors here? Well, a few reasons, but let's try and fix a few things. Now, if we go back to the DurationBond header file, we saw we had this little bit of magic. So we're going to piggyback on Bond. This thing's going to receive 5 variables. Fantastic. What are we going to do with those 5 variables? Got them coming in here. Do we do anything with them? No. Are we allowed to access the private member variables of Bond when we piggybacked it there? No. So what we're going to have to do, in following this piggyback notation, I'd like to draw a little pig just there actually, because that's what we're doing, we're piggybacking. We need to say, please Mr. Bond, can you just do a little bit of construction for me? Can you just take those 5 variables I've just received and can you pass them on and make a Bond kind of thing for me, please? Can you access your private variables and set everything up? So here we're going to the super constructor. We're going to the constructor above DurationBond. We're sort of saying, it's like going to your dad and saying, right, you're playing your first round of golf. So you're playing your first round of golf, you got your golf clubs, and you say to your dad, oh Dad, can you take my clubs and hit my shots for me just to set me up, just to get me onto the first green? So that's what we're kind of doing. That's what we're kind of doing there. Okay, getting lots of errors here, but hopefully they will all solve themselves. Oh, we haven't. You need to use namespace standard. So did we not do that in the H file? I thought we did that in the H file. Just need to. Did I do that there? No, I just need to. Did I? Oh. There we go. What's wrong with this? Cannot be defined in the result type of the function. So right, let's keep going and we'll see how that is going to sort itself out later on. Hopefully that will sort itself out later on. Looks alright to me so far. Right, okay, is there anything else we need to do? So, DurationBond there. Duration H. Okay. One thing I'd like to do as well is I'd like to clean up this file. We've got a lot of things in here that we don't actually currently need. The main thing being we've got lots of error messages in the C++ class, which we don't really need there. So what we'll change this here to in the bond constructor. Instead of this highly amusing message, we'll say in the bond deconstructor. And I just want to tidy this up a little bit. We've got a few messages in here that we kind of don't need now. It's just going to get very messy if we just keep printing all this stuff out. So let's get rid of all this. Ooh, big help message there. Big help message there. Don't need that. And we don't really need that either. And then all of this stuff can stay exactly the same. Okay, I think that looks alright. Let's get these errors here. What's wrong with this? Member duration bond. Give me the message. Constructor cannot have a return value. Looks alright to me. What's wrong with that? Duration bond. Looks fine to me. Member duration bond. So you can see all the messages. You can see the whole thing here. Semantic issue. Oh, it's one of these header. Oh, it's one of these header things. So let me see if I can resolve it. Oh, it seems to hopefully get rid of this. I don't know what that's doing there. Right, that seems to have sorted me out. Okay, can we give that a go now? Build failed. It's parse issue. Let's have a look at that. Parse issue expected what? What do we expect? The class. Oh, hang on. There we go. Is that going to work? Build succeeded. Fantastic. We got there in the end. It's a bit of fiddling, a bit of poking. Let's see what we've ended up with then. So, the main program, we now have DurationBond. So we're going from DurationBond. We're sending off these 5 things because we need to construct a basic bond. Later on we'll be adding special duration features. We're getting a price back using the method getBondPrice. Notice we have not written that in the DurationBond class. We're getting that from the underlying or the base class of bond. We can then print that out. So that's coming out. DB price is coming out there. That's this message here. Okay, so let's have a look then at the DurationBond header file. We're saying please include my granddaddy class or my super class or my underlying class or my base class. Here's me, DurationBond, but I'm piggybacking upon everything I can get hold of in Bond. I'm going to take 5 elements just like Bond, and I'm going to have a deconstructor as well. Notice no private variables, no methods, no other methods except the constructor and the destructor. In the DurationBond C++ file, the constructor takes those 5 inputs which were coming in from main here. It then says to the piggyback person, please, 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 can you take my 5 variables and construct something for me, please? Notice, nothing else in the constructor except a message, which we don't even need the message. The destructor does nothing except put a message out saying I'm in the deconstructor. And notice, I'm trying to move the program up, but there's nothing else in the file. Everything is now coming from here. So when we piggybacked and we set these 5 variables in, we get all of this stuff setting up, including setting these private variables, which DurationBond is not allowed to see. We don't need to copy and paste any of this pricing code. We just know this works and we've tested it a million times and it's perfect. We don't need to set up any of these methods. And as far as the main program is concerned, it doesn't even know about Bond. Bond is a well-placed hidden agent. Well, it does know about DurationBond. So we've inherited. This is sports car. We set up the sports car. We borrow all of the underlying methods, and we can now access those underlying methods via the object that we get back to get prices and things. Now I'm going to add things to the DurationBond class, but I think that that's probably enough to be getting on with. I'll see you next time.